Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Jennifer Sullivan, and I am the Principal Advisor of J. Sullivan Advisors. Thank you so much for joining us for this week's Brain Break featuring Steve Jones. I cannot wait to introduce you to him and for him to share his stories with us. Our hope with this Brain Break series is to give you about 30 minutes where you can just slow down. Sit back in your chair, stop taking care of other people or other things, and just relax a little bit. Most of the people on this call are either business owners or hospitality specialists or meeting professionals, and you're all givers. So our hope to you is that we can give back a little bit just for 30 minutes now. So thank you again for joining us. Before I ask Steve to join us, let me tell you a little bit about J. Sullivan Advisors. We are a boutique hospitality consultancy offering business solutions to hospitality owners and full event management services to meeting professionals. Within that realm of meetings, either conferences, events, incentive trips, or whatever, we can do the full gamut, anything from sourcing to site selection to contract negotiation to full event management or just on-site staffing. We love hearing that the meetings industry is back. Unfortunately, the word I'm hearing most planners use right now is that it's crazy. So we hope we can alleviate some of that craziness by either providing back office support or, as I said, on-site staffing as you're trying to operate many, many programs. So I think the thing that makes J. Sullivan Advisors is that, like independent planners, we are very high touch, but we're low overhead. And we're able to pass that savings along to you. We are also a team, so that if something were to happen to your lead planner, there are 6 of us standing behind her, giving you the peace of mind and assurance, knowing that someone is always going to be available in case something happens to your lead planner. The other thing that makes us different is our rock star team. So let me share a picture of them. One second here. Let's see. It's the dynamic makeup of this team and the backgrounds that we have that make your events that much stronger. Some of these faces will look familiar to you as they are former planners, Sharon Chapman, formerly with Guardian, Jana Stern, formerly with Voya, Tonine McGarvey, formerly with BMW and Mini. And then also we have seasoned and savvy hoteliers, mostly from the luxury segment. Michelle Babin, Kelly Woods-Stalmer, Joanne Peart, and myself, all coming from the Ritz-Carlton background. As I said, we all work collaboratively, so we bring these 2 very different perspectives to all of our programs, making them that much stronger. So collectively, we are strategists, we are relationship builders, and we are magic makers. We are all passionate about travel. We're passionate about building loyalty through events, and we are passionate about taking care of others. So we would certainly love to put all of these passions to work for you and your clients. So I will reach out later this week to learn a little bit more about your programs. So keep an eye out for that and let us know how we can support you in the future. And now, the reason you're all here, it's my pleasure to introduce to you Steve Jones. Steve has over 35 years in the music industry, and he has had a front row seat to the rise and unfortunately the fall of many, many rock artists. He serves now on the executive team for, I'm getting all nervous because of his qualifications. Sorry, Steve. And he's involved in helping all kinds of, Stingray is the name of his company, working with music, media, and technology. He oversees the content and branding for over 103 radio stations in that capacity. So in addition to this, he is an acclaimed author of 2 marketing and branding books. And we're very excited that he is sharing all of his knowledge and experience, not only in the rock and roll perspective, but also in the business and branding perspective, now as a professional speaker. So if you're looking for not only a great storyteller, but a really relevant content to get your team fired up, we definitely would suggest Steve. And thank Diane Goodman with Goodman Speaker Management for bringing Steve to our attention. Again, putting together great people is what Diane does best, and we're very appreciative for that. So this is one quote I'm going to read verbatim because I love it. If you want to build a brand as consistent as AC/DC, as committed as U2, as unique as KISS, and as honest as Foo Fighters, you're definitely going to want to listen carefully to Steve speak. So Steve, thank you again for giving us your personal time today.
Oh, thank you. It's my honor and privilege. I know time is very, very valuable, so I will try and make it worth everyone's while. At the very least, I promise we'll listen to some good music, hear some good stories, and hopefully take away some things that you can use in your day-to-day world to make 2021 and beyond more successful than anything we've experienced in the past. And it's been a tough 18 months for a lot of people. I think we're all poised for some big success going into the future. So with that, I will share my screen here. And one second.
And Steve, I forgot to invite people to leave questions in the chat session. So please feel free to put those in as you think of them, and then Steve will answer questions at the end.
Perfect. Well, thank you very much. We're going to focus on the Rockstar comeback today. And as I hear Jennifer talk about what their team does and what many of you do in the event industry, it feels like you're the roadies of rock and roll. You know, people arrive at an arena, they see an amazing stage, there's an amazing sound set up, and an amazing band plays, and everyone leaves energized. And very few people stop to think about all of the logistics that went into making that show happen. You know, the real rock stars are the people behind the scenes who put all of this together and create these amazing events. And the weird thing about it when you're in the event space is that you almost take it as a compliment if people don't even know you were there, that you didn't do a thing, because they were focused on what they really should have been focused on, which was the performance on stage. I know as a speaker, I just cherish working with great event teams, because I know when I have that freedom, when I walk on stage, to just do what I'm there to do and not worry about anything, it's so much better. It's very liberating. So thank you very much for all you do for people like me to help make our lives so much easier. What we're going to talk about today is based on a book I wrote called Brand Like a Rockstar. And the essence behind Brand Like a Rockstar is that everything you need to know about business, you can learn from rock and roll. And I wouldn't blame you if your first question was, really, why rock stars? Well, here's a good example. KISS. KISS inspired people to wear crazy makeup. And the fan club is so passionate, it became known as the KISS Army. If your fans identify as a military organization, I think that's a pretty decent level of commitment. Or this. The Grateful Dead, who could play night after night in the same city. And they would attract the same fans who would come to hear different songs. These people would follow the Grateful Dead around and became known as the Deadheads. Similarly, Jimmy Buffett attracted his own following, the Parrot Heads. Jimmy's another artist who inspires that level of passion. When people dress up in crazy costumes and really commit to the experience. And this is another slide that might, demonstrate why rock stars are valuable when we want to learn about business. This is the stage after a concert. And as you can see on that stage, it is littered with women's underwear that have been placed there by fans of Tom Jones. For years, Tom Jones fans have thrown their underwear on stage in his honor. That's a level of commitment I think we can admire, and we can learn from the rock stars who inspire that level of commitment. But like so many other things, what goes up must come down, and even the biggest rock stars have had to recover from some big plummets and start over again. That's what we'll focus on today with the rock star comeback. I'll take you through 3 legendary comebacks and explore what these artists did to help position themselves for incredible success. The first one is Meat Loaf. You may remember Meat Loaf. in the late 1970s. In 1977, in fact, his album, Bat Out of Hell, you could not escape this. If you were anywhere in that era, you heard Paradise by the Dashboard Light and 2 Out of 3 Ain't Bad. Meatloaf was on top of the world in 1977. And that album, Bat Out of Hell, went on to become one of the biggest selling albums in rock history. I think it's number 2 behind Thriller. It is one of the most successful albums in history. Unfortunately, after that album came out, everything went wrong for Meatloaf. First of all, his songwriting partnership with Jim Steinman dissolved. They broke up. He injured himself on stage and began to take painkillers, became addicted to those. His record label was suing him. Everything was going wrong. His voice went, his health went, his mental health went. And at one point, Meatloaf declared bankruptcy, was suicidal, and his career was essentially over. There was only one person who believed Meatloaf could succeed again, and that was Meatloaf. And he kept trying and trying. He kept touring. His wife actually became a certified travel agent in order to get discounts on their touring to keep their costs down. They did everything they could to keep Meatloaf's career alive. It took a while. In fact, it's one of the greatest comebacks in rock history because it took 16 long years between #1 songs. But in 1993, Meatloaf, Bat Out of Hell 2, became a #1 album. And that song went to #1 in 23 countries. That was I Would Do Anything for Love, but I Won't Do That. And Meatloaf, after 16 years, found himself on top once again. His career was revived. He continued to be a star. He doesn't tour as much now. In his older years, his health has been in question. But Meatloaf has an amazing story of 16 years of rock bottom, both financially and mentally. And I think the one thing that we learned from Meatloaf, and it is so simple, I know it's a very simple lesson, you've got to always believe in yourself. There will be a million people who can tell you why you won't succeed. And it happens so often in rock and roll. Everyone around you wants to tell you why your song sucks, why it won't work, why it might fail. But people like Meatloaf and others in the arts world, I think artists are particularly prone to this level of sort of self-abuse, where they just always believe so passionately in themselves and what they're able to accomplish. And that is the first step in a comeback. Always believe in the positive outcome, even though things might be dark now. And as we emerge in this pandemic and we look to restore relationships and build face-to-face and maybe drop a few pounds and do whatever it is we need to do coming out of this pandemic, it is that sense of self-belief that we'll build our success on. The second artist I want to talk about today is one you wouldn't normally consider for a comeback, and that is Justin Bieber. Now, we all know Justin Bieber emerged as a young teenager, a YouTube sensation, and then things started to get weird for Justin. He went from being this lovable kid to this very unlovable punk, and he did some really dumb things. For example, there was the time in Germany where he thought it would be fun to spit off the balcony on his fans. Also on that trip, he brought a pet monkey into Germany and had it confiscated, and that made the news. And then there was numerous incidences where he was held back or sometimes not held back from starting fights with fans or paparazzi. Got in a lot of trouble for being a belligerent, delinquent kind of kid. In fact, it culminated in Florida when Justin Bieber was arrested for impaired driving and for stunt driving. And simultaneously, California was arrested for vandalism, for throwing eggs at his neighbor's property. There was a point, and it was only a few years ago, where the meteoric rise of Justin Bieber was history, and the industry had pretty much written Justin Bieber off. And I can say that from the inside looking out, pretty much the industry thought this kid is done, it's over. But a couple of really amazing things happened between that kid and this kid, the relatively clean-cut, nice guy that Justin Bieber is known as today. The first step And the credit goes to his manager, a man named Scooter Braun. They retreated and regrouped. For about 6 or 8 months, we didn't even hear Justin's name. He wasn't on TMZ. He wasn't being mentioned in the press. He just went dark and went silent. It was like a palate cleanser for those of us who had had enough of hearing about the negative antics of Justin Bieber. The regroup was step one. Step two, he held himself accountable. And the way they did that was his first big appearance after disappearing for about 6 or 8 months was on the Comedy Central roast. It was the Comedy Central roast of Justin Bieber. I would love to play you some audio for it, but it is way too profanity laced to share, but you can look it up yourself. It's funny, but it's dark. And a lot of A-list comedians got up and took very, very hard shots at Justin Bieber. And he sat there and he took it like an adult. And at the end of it all, he got up and he said to everyone, I know I've been a punk. I know I've been a troubled kid, but I'm going to be different in the future. And he owned his own behavior. He did the same thing a few weeks later on the Ellen DeGeneres show. And then he reemerged as an artist, but he didn't reemerge on his own. The real key to Justin Bieber's comeback and the key lesson of his story, lean on your friends, your network of contacts and associates and friends and collaborators. They can be your key to success. Because as Justin Bieber came out of all that negativity, I don't think anyone wanted to admit that they were a fan of Justin Bieber. But they could admit that they were a fan of DJ Khaled. They collaborated on a #1 hit called I'm the One. Justin provided the lead vocals on Despacito, one of the biggest hits in the world in 2017 for Louis Fonsi and Daddy Yankee. And he collaborated with his good friend Ed Sheeran on this song called Love Yourself. Very few people realize that Ed's a part of the song. In fact, he wrote the song in my hometown of Toronto, Ontario, in the back of his tour bus after playing a show in Toronto. And he shared it with Justin, and it became a huge #1 hit for Justin Bieber. And I think that's the key takeaway from Justin's rise to fame, because now everything Justin Bieber touches turns to gold, and in large part he owes a debt to his friends. He collaborated with a whole lot of people who still had credibility, and he borrowed their credibility for himself, and that helped prop him up and make him acceptable again. And he's had an amazing run since then. So Meatloaf, always believe in yourself. Justin Bieber, always believe in your friends. Turn to your friends, your network, your collaborators, your partners. Turn to them for support and help use their credibility, their knowledge to your benefit. The third artist I want to talk about today is Aerosmith and Run DMC. If you're a kid of the 80s, and I can admit I'm 50 now, so I grew up really coming of age with 80s music. And in 1986, this collaboration broke so many grounds. Aerosmith, you see Steve Tyler on the left and Joe Perry on the right, and Run DMC, the three guys from Run DMC in the middle. This was a really weird collaboration. Run DMC didn't even know who Aerosmith was, but they did use one of Aerosmith's songs to rap to. They used to use the drum beat from Walk This Way. And they would freestyle their rap lyrics over that drum beat. It's a very iconic drum beat and guitar riff, and they would perform over it, but they never realized it was a complete song. It was their producer, Rick Rubin. Rick said to the guys in Run DMC, you need to do that song with Aerosmith. Now, Run DMC at the time was part of, the hip hop movement. And in the mid 80s, that movement had not yet gone global. Hip hop was only really a musical force in big American cities. Kids in Berlin and in Brisbane, Australia weren't listening to hip hop. It was a confined thing. Also at that time, Aerosmith was a washed up bunch of drug addicts. They had just come out of rehab. They almost broke up. no one thought that Aerosmith had any gas left in their career tank. And neither act wanted to work with the other one. Aerosmith didn't see value in lowering themselves to work with a hip hop band when rock and roll was the thing. And these hip hop guys, they saw no benefit to damaging their hip hop credibility by working with a bunch of washed up rock stars. But they did work together on the advice of Rick Rubin, and the result was a remake of Walk This Way that changed the song and changed the course of history. This version of Walk This Way, with Run DMC and Aerosmith working together, went on to be a bigger hit than the original version that Aerosmith recorded in the 70s. And there's a moment in the video for Walk This Way where in the video, each act is performing on different sides of a wall. And in the video, there's a moment where Steven Tyler of Aerosmith takes his mic stand and smashes a hole in the wall, opening up the space between Run DMC and Aerosmith. And Daryl McDaniel of Run DMC says that moment where he smashed down the wall was really more than figurative. It really happened.
Now, when I go to high schools and middle schools and I speak to the kids, I always tell the kids this: always be open to try something new, because it might not just only change your life, it could change the world. People tell me when Steven Tyler took that mic stand and knocked down that wall in the Walk This Way video, that didn't just happen in the video, that happened in real life.
That happened in real life. And that was the magic of that video. And that was the magic of that collaboration. These Black hip hop artists and this washed up group of white rock musicians who should have never collaborated together did. And they created something that was musically powerful, but they also created something that was culturally powerful. That mic stand literally broke down barriers. And as Daryl says, always be open to trying something new, because it might not only just change your life, it could change the world. And that is the third point. Always be open to trying something new. There are going to be opportunities that present themselves that are unlike anything you've ever done before. I can say as a speaker, up until a year and a half ago, I had not done a single virtual presentation. It's a very different experience, but it's a valuable experience, and it's made me better at what I do. Now, I first choice would love to be back on stage in front of a real audience with give and take, and there's an energy to that you can't replace. But you got to be open to trying something new, whatever that might be. Those are my three thoughts for today, and I know we're only just touching the surface of what we can learn from rock legends. In the full Brand Like a Rockstar presentation, which is usually about an hour long, we go much deeper into how businesses can turn customers into true fans, and the strategies that rock stars from Kiss and U2 and Taylor Swift and Foo Fighters and Jimmy Buffett and Justin Bieber and others have used to create those incredibly passionate fan bases and to engage those fan bases for their continued success and profit. That's what the on-stage version looks like, and it's a lot longer. It involves a lot more video that we don't share on the virtual presentations because it's a little hard to rely on everyone's bandwidth for that video. But everything's based on Brand Like a Rockstar. And if we do have an opportunity to work together, I'd be very grateful to meet in person. And if you'd like to keep in touch, all of my contact information is there, and Diane's contact information as well.
Thank you so much, Steve. I was like writing fast and furious. And also just want to say thanks to everyone on the call for sharing what your biggest challenge was coming back from COVID. I think that, you know, these pieces of advice apply to all of these. Believe in yourself, regroup, hold yourself accountable, lean on friends, and always be open to trying something new. As you said, they're not, you know, not new, but putting them in context of business, and if these rock stars can do it, we can certainly do it, is so helpful.
Absolutely. Thank you. I know they're, you know, it's only 3 key points. I'm used to doing, 10 or 12, but it's, I find that it's really valuable to look at music and detach you know, the passion we have for the bands and the songs is amazing, but what is behind that, sort of in the same way that event organizers are behind the stage like roadies, what's behind all of that success generally is strategy. It's usually well thought out and well planned. Admittedly, there are a lot of stories in rock history where artists, you know, simply stumbled into success. But even in those cases, there are things we can learn and take away from their success and apply toward our own business.
Right. We do have a question here. Did Run DMC and Aerosmith actually record together, or were their tracks dubbed together?
You know, I understand through history, and I wasn't there, but I understand they did record together. They shot the video together, and they performed that song on stage together. And in hindsight, both acts, you know, cite that as a turning point. For Run DMC, that was that microphone stand through the wall, as I've mentioned, so symbolic because it broke open hip hop to the world. And instead of having sort of a core audience in big American cities, now hip hop was everywhere. There were kids all over the world who went and sought out more music by Run DMC and more music by Public Enemy. And that led to, you know, that was 1986. And by the early 90s, hip hop was really everywhere and dominated music in the 90s, influenced rock to a great deal going forward too. So it was a floodgate moment for Run DMC and for hip hop. It was also a floodgate moment for Aerosmith because they were washed up. And after working with Run DMC, there was now a generation of kids who were saying, who's Aerosmith? Let's figure this band out. And going back and discovering their old catalog from the 70s. But also for Aerosmith, it represented a watershed moment for their own creativity. They got a record deal. They released Permanent Vacation and Pump, and they went on to record their most prolific, you know, stretch of music and their most profitable stretch of music after working with Run DMC. So the cool thing about that story is that, you know, neither band wanted to do it. They reluctantly did. And thanks to that bravery, they both went on to much bigger things than they ever would have accomplished had they not taken that risk.
I love that. I love that. I'm a big fan of collaboration, but it means something different when you're looking for people who are completely different than you to collaborate with. The benefit of that and the risk involved.
I think it speaks today too to the kind of inclusive culture that I think we're waking up to building together, whether it's breaking down racial barriers or gender gaps or whatever it might be. You know, today's connected world allows collaborators to work across so many different borders and time zones and continents. A great example, I played Justin Bieber's Despacito. That song is a fantastic example of collaboration across boundaries. The song was written by a woman from Ecuador. It was recorded by two Americans from Puerto Rico. It was mixed by an Australian who was on vacation in Turks and Caicos. And the lead vocal was cut by a Canadian who was touring in Colombia and recorded it in the studio in Colombia. So, you know, you've pretty much brought in the whole world to collaborate on that one song. It's pretty cool what we can do now if we're open to working with people who aren't like us, who aren't from where we're from, you know?
It's funny that you brought up Justin Bieber as that example. I was listening to a Christian radio station the other day, and I was like, I swear this is Justin Bieber, but how can that be? And then I heard this story about how he deliberately sought out artists that were different from him to collaborate with, and asked Steve, and he said, yeah, he did. He went out
and he's done it in a credible way. He hasn't tried, you know, you can question Justin Bieber's personal beliefs, but he has espoused Christian beliefs to his core, and he has recorded music that reflects that. And I think that's a key thing when you're going to expand yourself into those spaces, whether it's Christian music or hip hop or rock. You've got to be credible. You've got to do it with a sense of credibility.
Yep. We have an interesting question here. With your work at Stingray, who would you say are one or two up and coming artists that we should keep an eye out for?
Wow, one or two up and coming. That's a great question. There's an artist whose name is Donovan Woods. Donovan is amazing songwriter, and you've probably heard his work if you listen to country music, because for years he's been writing hits for country artists. But he's a singer-songwriter in his own right, and he's amazing. He would be number one on my list of up and coming.
Donovan Woods. Okay, great. Well, as I said, Steve is available to speak at your company's meetings. I could go on and on with just questions and picking your brain, but we want to be respectful of everyone's time today. So I will go ahead and include, as I said, Steve's contact information through Diane in the email that I send out, and you guys can keep the conversation going. I'll include a link to Donovan Woods. I'll look him up as well, and maybe even that Beaver comedy roast. I'm not sure. We'll have to.
Yeah, that one's touch and go, but
okay.
Yeah, I appreciate all that. Thank you so much for the time and for the opportunity to share these stories. It's been a lot of fun.
Oh, it's been our pleasure. Thank you again for sharing your time with us, your talent, your knowledge. We definitely appreciate it. And everyone's jumping in the chat right now saying thank you. So thank you very much. Y'all, until the next brain break, everyone be well. Take care.